There comes a moment in every woman's life when silence becomes her greatest power, not because she's weak, not because she's defeated, but because she finally realizes her worth is too valuable to waste on someone who couldn't see it. Today, I want to speak to the woman who loved deeply, who gave honestly, who showed up wholeheartedly, but still ended up being overlooked. This message is for you. Sometimes God allows distance to reveal the truth. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. When you step back, when you go silent, when you choose peace over proving your point, something shifts, not just in him, but in you. And that's where real transformation begins. Steve Harvey says, let them feel your absence. And he's right, because when a woman stops explaining herself, stops chasing, stops lowering her standards just to be understood, her silence becomes the loudest lesson he'll ever hear. This is your moment to rise, to reclaim your energy, to walk with the kind of confidence that makes him replay everything he took for granted. So let's talk about how going silent doesn't break you, it builds you. And how your silence can make him miss you deeper than your words ever could. When you go silent, you give him the space to hear everything he ignored. And silence, for a woman who has already given her all, is not weakness, it's clarity. It's the moment you stop trying to convince someone to see what was always right in front of them. You've spoken with your heart. You've shown up with your effort. You've loved with your sincerity, and still something in him chose to overlook the value you brought. When you go quiet, you're not disappearing, you're allowing reality to speak louder than your words ever could. A man doesn't hear you when you keep explaining, begging, correcting, or trying to fix what he keeps breaking. But the moment you stop talking, the moment you stop making yourself available, that's when every memory suddenly becomes clearer to him. Your smile, your loyalty, your support, your softness, your energy, these things start replaying in his mind because they're no longer guaranteed. Silence makes him sit with the consequences he thought he'd never have to face. And the beauty of this shift is that silence also makes you hear yourself. It makes you aware of how much you've carried, how much you've tolerated, how much you've given without being poured into. Silence isn't just a message to him, it's a mirror for you. It shows you where your boundaries were missing. It shows you how deeply you were hoping for change. And it shows you that you deserve reciprocity, not reminders of your pain. When you go silent, you stop fighting for a seat at a table where you were serving everything and receiving nothing. You disconnect from the noise of his excuses, his inconsistency, his lack of effort. Suddenly, you start to feel your strength returning, the kind of strength that comes from finally choosing yourself. You begin to rise in ways he never expected because he was used to you being accessible, understanding, forgiving, and available. Silence makes a man confront the version of himself he didn't want to see, the version that didn't treat you right, didn't value you, didn't match your level, didn't protect what he had. And that realization doesn't whisper, it hits him hard, because he's left with the echo of what used to be your voice, your presence, your warmth. Your silence becomes a message that says, I know my worth, I know my value, and I'm not waiting here hoping you finally learn it. And the truth is, a man can dismiss your words, but he can't escape your absence. He can tune out your conversations, but he can't avoid the void you leave behind. That's why silence is powerful, because it creates space, and in that space, regret grows, reflection deepens, and awareness hits in a way your explanations never could. A woman who stops chasing becomes the woman a man can't stop thinking about. There is a shift that happens the moment you decide you're done trying to prove your worth to someone who couldn't recognize it. Chasing drains your spirit, it exhausts your energy, and it slowly convinces you that love is something you have to earn rather than something you deserve. But when you stop running after someone who keeps walking away, you reclaim your power in a way he never saw coming. Men are wired to notice what is no longer pursuing them. As long as you were calling first, trying first, fixing first, and giving more than you received, he got comfortable. He expected your effort. He expected your patience. He expected you to show up even when he didn't. But the moment that pattern breaks, the moment you choose silence, space, and self-respect, something inside of him wakes up. He starts replaying the times you reached out, the times you forgave him, the moments you stayed supportive even when you were hurting. And suddenly, those things don't feel so guaranteed anymore. When you stop chasing, your energy changes. You no longer move from desperation or fear of losing him. You begin to move from strength, confidence, and self-worth. And that shift is magnetic. Your absence becomes loud, your silence becomes meaningful, and your distance becomes a message he can't ignore. You stop being the woman who was always there and start becoming the woman he wishes he appreciated when he had the chance. He begins to wonder why you're not texting, why you're not asking, why you're not explaining yourself anymore. That confusion turns into curiosity, and curiosity becomes longing. But the most powerful part is what happens inside of you. When you stop chasing him, you start finding yourself again. You reconnect with the parts of you that got lost while trying to keep the relationship together. You rediscover your passions, your peace, your joy, your confidence. And that growth makes you shine in a way he hasn't seen before. You start to glow differently, speak differently, move differently. Your aura becomes stronger because it's no longer weighed down by trying to fix someone who wasn't healing themselves. A man may run from pressure, but he will always return to value. And when you stop chasing, he finally sees the difference between the attention you used to give and the silence you now offer. He starts to feel the loss. He starts to feel the distance. He starts to realize he was not replaced. You simply elevated. And nothing makes a man think harder than seeing a woman he underestimated rise without him. Stopping the chase teaches him a lesson he couldn't learn while you were trying to save the connection. It shows him that your love is a privilege, not a guarantee. It teaches him that your presence is earned, not owed, and it makes him face the truth he had a woman with patience, loyalty, effort, and a good heart, yet he chose to take it for granted. That truth doesn't fade, it stays with him, it humbles him, it follows him even when he tries to distract himself. When you stop chasing, you gain clarity. You see who was truly trying and who was just benefiting from your effort. You see who valued you and who valued your convenience. And you learn that peace comes not from holding on, but from letting go of anything that requires you to lose yourself. You become the woman he can't stop thinking about because you finally stop trying to convince him of what he should have known from the beginning. Your absence will teach him what your presence never could. When a woman has been consistent, loving, patient, and supportive, her presence becomes something a man gets used to. He stops noticing the small things she does, he stops valuing the effort she puts in, and he starts assuming she will always be there no matter how lightly he holds her. Presence, especially a good woman's presence, can become so familiar that a man forgets it's not guaranteed. But when she finally steps back, when she finally puts her peace above the relationship, when she stops showing up in all the ways he expected, that absence begins to speak a language he can no longer ignore. Absence has a power that presence sometimes doesn't. Your presence showed him love, loyalty, and consistency. Your presence gave him comfort, stability, and reassurance. But your absence gives him contrast, and contrast is what forces realization. It makes him compare the life he had with you to the life he has without you. It makes him confront the effort he didn't give, the attention he didn't show, and the moments he dismissed because he assumed there would always be more time. A woman stepping back creates a silence that echoes in a man's mind far louder than her words ever did. When you're present, he might overlook your kindness. When you're absent, he feels the loss of it. When you're present, he may take your forgiveness for granted. When you're absent, he realizes how rare that grace was. Your absence teaches him the cost of everything he ignored: the late night talks, the emotional support, the encouragement you whispered into his life, the peace you brought to his chaos. He begins to feel the weight of what he once held but never protected. And as your absence grows, so does his awareness. He starts asking himself questions he never considered when you were around. Why isn't she calling? Why isn't she checking up on me? Why does her energy feel distant? Why is she moving like she doesn't need me anymore? That confusion turns into reflection, and reflection turns into regret. He begins to notice the emptiness where your presence used to be. He notices that the conversations don't feel the same without you. He notices that the comfort he once had doesn't exist with anyone else. But while he's feeling the absence, you are feeling something too, clarity. Stepping back helps you understand your worth in a way his presence never did. You start to see that you were giving too much while accepting too little. You begin to understand that your love should feel reciprocal, not painful. You realize that you weren't losing him. He was losing the version of you that poured into him without hesitation. And that understanding gives you strength, the kind that helps you heal, grow, and elevate. Your absence teaches him something else too, that not every woman can be replaced. In a world full of temporary connections and shallow attention, your depth becomes unforgettable. He remembers the way you listened, the way you cared, the way you loved from a place of sincerity. He remembers the warmth of your energy, the softness of your heart, the comfort of your presence. And when he meets others, he begins to notice what they lack, because they don't carry what you carried effortlessly. There comes a moment when a man realizes the difference between someone who wanted him and someone who valued him. And your absence is what forces him to see that difference clearly. The space you create becomes a mirror he can't walk away from, a mirror that reflects his mistakes, his lack of effort, his emotional distance. It shows him that you were the steady one, the committed one, the one who tried when he offered excuses. And that truth tastes bitter because it's a truth he can't change. Your absence also teaches him accountability. It teaches him that losing someone doesn't happen all at once. It happens moment by moment when he stops appreciating what he has. It teaches him that a woman who loves deeply will walk away quietly because silence is her final act of self-respect. And once she's gone, he realizes she didn't leave to punish him, she left to protect herself. And the lesson your presence could never teach him is this: you were never asking for too much, you were giving too much to someone who gave too little. Your absence becomes the turning point he never saw coming, the wake-up call he didn't know he needed, the reminder that a woman with a good heart is rare, and losing her is a loss he will feel in ways words can't explain. Silence is the real upgrade. It's where your self-respect finally speaks. There comes a moment in every woman's journey when she realizes that talking, explaining, repeating, and hoping won't change a thing. That moment births a new kind of strength, a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, doesn't plead, a strength that simply chooses silence because silence carries a message that words never could. When you step back and let your silence speak, you shift the entire dynamic. Suddenly, the woman he thought would always be there becomes the woman he can no longer reach. Silence is powerful because it interrupts the patterns he became comfortable with. He was used to your reactions, your explanations, your forgiveness. He depended on your emotional labor, your softness, your willingness to keep conversations going even when he shut down. But silence removes all of that. It forces him to feel what life looks like without your voice soothing the tension, without your patience easing the conflict, without your energy grounding the chaos. Silence gives him the space to confront the version of himself he kept ignoring while you were trying to hold everything together. And while he's sitting in that space, you begin to rediscover your own. You start reconnecting with yourself in ways you forgot you needed. You feel your confidence rising again because you're no longer tying your worth to someone else's attention. You feel your peace returning because you're no longer draining yourself trying to fix what wasn't balanced. You feel your heart healing because silence creates room for truth, and truth reminds you that you deserve effort, care, presence, and consistency, not excuses. Silence doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. It draws a line between what you've given and what you will no longer accept. It shifts the focus from what he wants to what you need. And when you choose silence from a place of self-respect, something extraordinary happens. You elevate. You rise above the emotional noise. You stop reacting to things beneath your growth. You stop internalizing what was never yours to carry. And while you rise, he finally feels the distance. He feels the loss of your warmth, your words, your willingness to show up. He feels the absence of the woman who once poured into him unselfishly. Silence makes him remember everything he took lightly because he never imagined losing it. Silence makes him replay moments where he should have shown up differently. Silence becomes the mirror of his regrets. The beauty of silence is that it does the work without you having to exhaust yourself. It teaches him, it strengthens you, and it restores the balance you lost while trying too hard to be understood. Your silence becomes the moment he realizes your value wasn't in what you said, it was in who you were. And now that you're silent, that value becomes impossible for him to ignore. When you pull back, he starts replaying every moment he took for granted. Distance has a way of sharpening a man's memory in a way your presence never could. When you were giving, loving, supporting, and showing up with your whole heart, he didn't stop to think about how rare that kind of woman is. He didn't pause to appreciate the softness in your voice, the loyalty in your actions, the patience in your heart. He got used to your consistency. He assumed your effort was endless. He thought your love would stretch forever. But when you finally pull back, truly pull back, everything he overlooked suddenly becomes everything he can't stop thinking about. A man notices silence differently when it comes from a woman who once gave him everything. He feels the shift in your tone, the change in your energy, the distance in your presence. He feels the absence of the good morning texts he used to skim over. He feels the loss of the late night conversations that kept him grounded. He feels the difference when your attention no longer circles around him. And in that silence, he starts replaying moments he brushed off. The times you stood by him when he wasn't giving you the same. The times you forgave him when you were hurting. The moments you supported his dreams when he didn't even show up for yours. Every one of those memories begins to visit him, and they don't come softly, they come with weight. Pulling back doesn't just create space, it reveals truth. It shows you what he was really willing to fight for. It shows you who he becomes when he no longer feels prioritized. And it shows him what life feels like when he no longer has access to your energy. Suddenly, he realizes that you weren't asking for much. You were asking for the bare minimum. And he sees with painful clarity how often he failed to give even that. He begins questioning his own decisions. He starts wondering why he couldn't appreciate a woman who was loyal, real, steady, and present. And replaying those moments becomes a loop he can't escape because regret grows in silence, not in noise. But while he's replaying everything he took for granted, something powerful is happening in you too. Pulling back gives you your perspective back. It helps you see the relationship without the fog of emotion. It helps you recognize the parts of yourself you sacrificed to keep him comfortable. It reminds you that love shouldn't require you to shrink, swallow your needs, or settle for half effort. Pulling back helps you return to the woman you were before he made you doubt yourself. The woman with vision, strength, softness, confidence, and boundaries. And as you rise in that clarity, your glow changes. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. You start prioritizing your peace instead of the relationship. You start valuing your time instead of giving endless chances. That version of you, the woman who learned from the pain instead of staying in it, becomes unforgettable, and he knows it. A man who loses access to a good woman never forgets what that loss feels like. The moments he replayed become lessons he learned too late. The effort he didn't give becomes the regret he carries quietly, and the woman he thought he had forever becomes the woman he watches elevate without him. When you pull back, your silence teaches him in ways your love never could. A man values what he fears losing, so make your peace non-negotiable. When a woman finally understands this truth, everything about the way she moves begins to transform. You stop overgiving, you stop settling, you stop arguing for your worth, you stop bending your boundaries just to keep someone close. Instead, you start prioritizing your mental, emotional, and spiritual peace in a way that makes anyone who wants a place in your life rise to the standard. A man who knows he can disrespect your peace and still have access to you will never value you the way you deserve. But a man who sees that you protect your peace with confidence, discipline, and self-respect begins to look at you differently. Your peace is not just silence. It's your energy, your time, your heart, your mind. It's the space you create to think clearly, grow freely, heal deeply, and rise fully. When you make those things non-negotiable, you automatically change the terms of the relationship. You're no longer the woman who tolerates inconsistency just to feel loved. You become the woman who walks away from anything that disturbs her spirit. And that shift is powerful because it teaches him that love is not enough. You need respect, stability, effort, and emotional safety to stay. When your peace becomes the priority, he begins to sense the difference. He notices that you don't entertain games. He sees that you don't respond to half efforts. He realizes that you're not moved by empty promises or temporary affection. He feels the weight of your silence when something crosses your boundary, and he understands that silence isn't punishment, it's protection. A woman who guards her peace is a woman who has healed enough to walk away from chaos, no matter how familiar it once felt. And the truth is, a man values what shakes him into awareness. When he senses that he could lose you, not because you're being dramatic, but because you're choosing yourself, his whole mindset shifts. He begins to reflect. He starts to listen. He starts to examine his own behavior. He starts to take accountability for what he ignored when he assumed he had endless access to you. Your peace becomes the reminder that you are not desperate, you are not replaceable, and you are not willing to break yourself to hold a relationship together. Making your peace non-negotiable also elevates the way you see yourself. You stop doubting your standards. You stop apologizing for your needs. You stop questioning whether you're asking for too much. You start understanding that anyone who truly wants you will never ask you to choose between loving them and loving yourself. And that understanding becomes your strength. It becomes the energy that protects you from being drained by someone who isn't ready to grow. And as you honor your peace, he begins to respect you in a way he never did when you were shrinking yourself to keep the connection alive. He sees the difference between a woman who tolerates anything and a woman who won't sacrifice her well-being for anyone. That difference creates value. It creates desire, and it creates the fear of losing you, because he finally realizes that a woman who chooses peace is a woman who will leave the moment she feels unseen. The glow that comes from healing hits harder than any words you could say. When a woman steps into her healing, everything about her begins to shift, strengthen, and shine in ways that silence the doubts she once carried. Healing is not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not meant to prove anything to anyone. It's an inward transformation that begins quietly, deep in the places where she once felt broken, overlooked, unappreciated, or unworthy. And when that internal shift begins, the world around her can't help but feel the difference. Healing makes you walk differently because you're no longer carrying the weight of someone else's behavior. You're no longer bending yourself to fit into a space that was too small for your heart. You're no longer blaming yourself for what someone else refused to give. Healing helps you understand that you never lacked anything. You just offered your everything to someone who wasn't prepared to receive it. And when that truth settles, your entire spirit rises. The glow isn't just physical, it's emotional, spiritual, mental. It's in the way you speak to yourself. It's in the way you set boundaries without guilt. It's in the way you protect your peace because you finally realize it's sacred. Healing teaches you that you can love someone and still choose yourself. It teaches you that letting go isn't losing. It's making room for what's meant for you. It teaches you that pain doesn't define you, your growth does. And while you're healing, he begins to notice, not because you're trying to make him notice, but because your evolution speaks louder than your explanations ever did. The woman he knew, the one who tolerated disrespect, accepted excuses, waited for effort, begged for communication, that woman no longer exists. She has outgrown the version of herself that made him comfortable. She has stepped into a space where her worth is non-negotiable, her boundaries are firm, and her vision for her life is bigger than any relationship that made her shrink. Men feel it when a woman heals. They feel the shift in her energy, the calm in her spirit, the clarity in her eyes. They feel the difference when she no longer reacts emotionally to things that once hurt her. They feel it when she doesn't chase closure, when she doesn't argue, when she doesn't seek validation from the same person who wounded her. That kind of emotional maturity hits differently because it shows that she has risen above what he expected. Healing also changes what you attract. You stop accepting unstable affection. You stop being drawn to chaos. You stop confusing inconsistency with chemistry. You begin to crave peace more than attention, alignment more than temporary comfort, and truth more than meaningless promises. Your glow becomes the result of choosing yourself repeatedly, even when it hurt, even when it felt lonely, even when you didn't know what would come next. And as you heal, you stop needing closure from him because the closure comes from within you. It comes from realizing that you deserve better than confusion. You deserve better than half love. You deserve better than someone who didn't recognize your value until you walked away. Healing is the moment you understand that you were never difficult to love. You just loved someone who didn't know how to handle something real. That's why your glow hits harder. Because it's not the glow of someone pretending to be strong, it's the glow of someone who became strong. It's the glow of someone who walked through heartbreak, disappointment, and self-doubt and still chose to rise. It's the glow of someone who learned that she is the blessing and losing her was the lesson. And that glow you're healing will always speak louder than any words you could ever say. When you choose you, he starts wishing he chose you better. There comes a point in every woman's life when she realizes that her happiness cannot depend on someone who doesn't see her value. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's the moment you put your needs, your growth, and your peace above the expectations of someone who has already shown that they cannot prioritize you. When you choose yourself, you stop trying to fix what he refuses to repair. You stop justifying behavior that doesn't honor your heart. You stop shrinking for someone who will never rise to your level. Choosing yourself is powerful because it creates space for him to realize what he lost. For too long, he may have taken your patience, your loyalty, your love, and your energy for granted. He assumed you would always be there, always forgiving, always available, always understanding. But when you stop accommodating his inconsistencies and start prioritizing your well-being, he begins to notice. He starts to feel the absence of the version of you who gave without hesitation. He begins to remember the moments he overlooked, the words he didn't say, and the effort he didn't show. And that realization stirs regret. The beauty of choosing yourself is that it elevates your energy. You no longer operate from fear, desperation, or the need to be validated by someone else. You operate from confidence, clarity, and self-respect. You set boundaries that cannot be crossed, standards that cannot be lowered, and expectations that cannot be ignored. And as you walk in that power, your presence becomes magnetic, not because you are seeking attention, but because your energy is undeniable. When he sees you thriving without him, the desire he ignored while you were present intensifies. The laughter you cultivate, the peace you protect, the growth you embrace, it all becomes a mirror of what he failed to nurture in the relationship. He realizes that he didn't lose just a partner. He lost a woman who refused to settle for less than she deserved. And that truth hits differently than anything you could say, because actions always speak louder than words. Choosing yourself also rewrites the story of your life. You start making decisions that align with your vision, your goals, and your worth. You stop waiting for someone to show up for you emotionally or mentally. You stop compromising your happiness for temporary comfort. You start building a life that is full, meaningful, and unapologetically yours. And as he watches from the sidelines, he can't help but reflect on the opportunities he let slip through his fingers, the love he failed to cherish, and the woman he should have fought to keep. And when you choose yourself consistently, you teach him and anyone else that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee, that your love is a gift, not a safety net, that a woman who knows her worth will never settle for less than she deserves, and losing her is the consequence of his choices, not your shortcomings. The moment you choose yourself, he begins to see the difference between a woman who gave endlessly and a woman who gives selectively, wisely, and powerfully. He starts wishing he had chosen better, loved harder, and valued more when he had the chance, because now you are walking in your power, glowing in your freedom, and thriving in your peace. Ladies, the power of silence is not about being cold or cruel. It's about reclaiming your life, your energy, and your worth. When you step back, when you stop explaining, when you stop chasing, you are not losing strength, you are gaining it. You are creating space for clarity, for healing, and for self-respect to shine through. Every moment of quiet is a lesson for him and a blessing for you, because it teaches him what he took for granted while reminding you that your value was never in his hands, it was always within you. Remember, silence is not absence of love, it's presence of power. It's the quiet confidence of a woman who knows she deserves respect, loyalty, and genuine care. When you stop trying to fix someone who couldn't see your worth, you rise above disappointment and step into the life that was always waiting for you. So go silent. Let your energy, your peace, and your unshakable self-respect speak louder than words ever could. Let him feel your absence, and let the universe show you that the woman who chooses herself first is unstoppable, undeniable, and unforgettable. Your silence is your strength, your glow, and your ultimate power.